Okay, so I'm on Mr. Nichols. He's 16. He never used to be ridden out by himself. So when I take him out by himself, he's a little looky. And he is lookier in our woods. So he does better on open trails where you can see everything. He's not really spooky, not much at all. But when he's on our trails alone, then he gets more nervous. If he's behind another horse, he's totally fine, because of course something will happen to that horse first. So then anybody could ride him. But your horse might look like, be a horse like this. They're a follower, which I like followers. So you got to push him when you're going out alone. But you saw he didn't give me any problems at all. He just went. But when I started taking him in the beginning, he kept going, "Are you sure about this? I don't want to go alone." So with a horse like this, it's a follower. You're trying to get him used to be going on the trail alone. You keep your hands wide, because if they're wide, you can just pull out to the side. When you're steering them, if they spook, you can pull out left, pull out right, because you're not trying to stop them. You're trying to go forward. So I'm not pulling back, which is a direct rein. I use an open rein, so I use it to the side. Nice thing about him is he's nice and short, so I can fit under everything. So when he came, he was a little bit trippy, and he was barefoot. So I thought he was trippy or stumbly because of his feet, because to me they felt sore. So I kind of do things gradual, because you're seeing what works best for the horse. So first, people had put boots on him, but it didn't. I guess it helped some, but not enough. So I immediately put shoes on him once he became mine. And I put the front shoes on, and he was so much better. But as I rode him out here, we have rocks sticking up. And I said, sometimes he still feels just a little still sore to me. So I put the shoes on the back feet. And guess what? Voila. He was fine. So up and down hills just fine. So, remember, as you're trying to figure things out, you got nothing to lose by putting some shoes on. And, just put it on the front first if you want, because that's less expensive. And if your horse still has issues, then stick them on the back and just see what happens. You can always pull the shoes off. It's not going to do anything horrendous to their foot. And you might actually fix the problem, because they might just need support. It might be their ligaments need support, or their feet just need support because it's sore. Okay, well, anyhow, that's his story. So he's a Kentucky Mountain horse, which is related to the Rocky Mountain horse. So their strides are a little bit shorter than the walking horse. So I half halted once or twice, because he got a little heavy, but not as heavy as that walking horse got. You'll notice the same trees. And there's rocks coming up. So I'm half halting now for the rocks. Make sure he's paying attention, because he's looking around. So he might not be paying a lot of attention to where his feet are. But he picks his feet up higher than that other horse. And he does a little foxtrot sometimes uphill. That's what he was just doing. So it might look like it was like his head was bopping up and down. And it's comfortable and it's fun. So I don't mind him doing it at all. We're not showing. So it's not like he has to stay in his racking gait. So it's just totally fine. But you'll see he's not having any problems going up and down or over things. He's doing well. The only bad thing he's doing really is looking around. And he's nervous, but he's definitely not as nervous as he used to be, because now I take him on the trail all by himself all the time. And it's just me. Okay. So here we got a little decline. It's nice to compare. Now he set himself back. So I didn't half halt once on him. He did that all by himself. Now here he got a little heavy, so I'm going to half halt, squeeze, hold, relax. So I did a little one there, because sometimes he's pacey, sometimes he's trotty, and I don't want him to get pacey. So when I said he got heavy on his front end. So here he's doing good. You scared yourself. He's rocking back on his hindquarters. And right here, though, he got a little heavy, and he started going towards the pace. So that means he pulled on the bit a little bit, and he started to pace, because that's a lazy thing to do. And all I did was half halt just to get him back. So again, if they're allowed to pace and do all these things they don't know they're not supposed to, so we have to help them, show him how to carry himself and how to carry us. But I never worry when the horses come and they do things like that, because most of the people have ridden them like they're riding like this on loose reins the whole time, not helping the horse, and the horse just does whatever and they accept it. So there he's getting a little just pacey down the hill, and all you got to do is just a couple of half halts and voila, you have a smooth horse. So again, now my foot got stuck on the tree, so he just jumped forward, but nothing horrible. Now that I didn't reprimand him for, because I actually kicked the tree, and it's okay. He's getting there. In time, we won't let him jump forward anymore either. Okay, so now he's just going to the bathroom. Depending on who I'm training the horses for, sometimes I let them stop, other times I don't. But if I'm trying to get them to be slow and relaxed, then I usually let them stop. So there's rocks coming up right in the middle of the trail. This would probably make me trip. Yep, nothing. So why is it easier for these horses? Because they have shorter strides than the walking horse. So they're taking more steps, and they're picking their feet up more oftentimes, where the walking horse is swinging that leg forward further so they can hit more things. And if they're doing their leg further but low, they're more likely to hit things. Where he's taking shorter steps and he lifts his feet a little higher. Okay, that's why I wanted that walking horse to learn how to trot, because it'll help him to pick his feet up and help him not to be so pacey. And the pacey ones swing their legs more and don't pick their feet up. So I'm doing as much as I can to help that horse to stop tripping. Okay, but this guy is what I'd call more sure-footed, because his stride is shorter, and he naturally trots and paces. It's not like I had to teach it to him, he just did it. Okay, so I'm just trying to give you a comparison of different horses. I like them all. I like the walking horses a lot, even though some of them trip, because their gait is so fun. But I don't think they're horses for people who are not going to learn how to ride, or they're lazy riders. I think you gotta, they're horses for people who are going to pay attention and want to have that smooth ride, or otherwise get one that's trotty or picks its feet up high, so you don't have that issue. Okay, so those are more rocks we're going over. Now he's got a nice little flat walk that he'll move out for the tree. And again, he can foxtrot, but he can also do a racking gait, but we have nowhere to do that right now. Okay, so I'm going to show him going down this little hill. So you'll see he keeps looking off, so right rein, try to get him to pay attention. But this would be the part that they might trip, because he wasn't looking. And then he just foxtrotted up that. Yep. And now we got the little pipe and the rocks. I'm going to keep him slow. Because again, sometimes some of them run down the hill and they try to run up the other side. And that's when a lot of them trip too, because they're not paying attention and they reach out and stub their foot on the other side. So as I'm riding him, I guess I'll talk to you about body position. I'm sitting directly on my seat bones, so my butt. And he's not pacing or doing anything wrong right now. So I'm just trying to stay centered in the saddle. And if your saddle fits you correctly, you should be able to put your palm in the front of your saddle, and then you should have just a little room in the back. So a couple little half halts on the bottom with him. So I'm using my half halts different than the other horse. Now here, this is going up a little bit, so let's go a little faster. So I'm ready that if he started to trot instead, I would pull on him, but a foxtrot is perfectly fine with me. Now when you go downhill, I put the weight down in my stirrups, and it's also in my seat bones, and I half halt. You're trying to keep yourself balanced, and I lean back a little bit, not super far unless it's super steep, but I do lean back a little bit because you're trying to help your horse balance himself, and you don't want the weight on their front end, because if they trip, they'll fall down, right? Because your weight's on top of it. So you want your weight back, so if they tripped or stubbed their foot or something, they'd be able to recover themselves because you're out of the way. And the more you help balance the horse, the easier it is if they trip or they have issues that they can reestablish, staying on their feet. But if you have very poor balance, or you flop all over when they do those things, well, then you're going to make it harder on your horse, and it might not trip with someone else, but it might trip with you, because you're throwing your weight around, and instead of helping the horse, you're actually making it harder for them. So think of that too if you got a horse that's tripping. Like, am I well balanced? Do I sit back? Or am I falling forward? You definitely don't want to ride in your thigh or be leaning forward if you have poor balance. Okay, they all look at this tree. He's much better at it now. So when I want to gait him, though, I do sit back a little bit further, and I do pop his head up, and that usually gets him into the racking gait. And then I really got to urge him forward. The more forward I get on this horse, the more he'll snap his knees up and look really cute. Otherwise, he'll do a decent gait, but he just kind of swings his legs and doesn't put any effort into it. And I want speed and balance. I want it to be fun. So if they spook, like he just spooked from something on the left, I just keep my right rein and right leg against him. So I'm ready to catch him so he doesn't spin around or bolt off the trail. So with any horse can spin, even if they're the best horse in the world, but if it's scary enough, they can spin. So you're trying to think ahead of time, hey, he just spooked from something on the left, so a deer could be up there, and if it jumps out or hits a tree or something, they might spook again. So I'm getting prepared and blocking them on the right side so that they don't spin and run down the hill. So if you have trails that are steep, maybe you're not going to gait a lot because they're so steep, then a horse with a shorter stride will be able to go on those trails easier. Usually will be more sure-footed. So if they're really steep, I always tell people Rocky Mountain horse, a Tennessee walking horse with a short stride, a Missouri Foxtrotter, Kentucky Mountain. You can do Icelandics and all that. Remember, the walking horse is the only one who's supposed to have an overreach. We're going to steer around this tree. And, but, you know, some of them are mixed spreads, and so some of the Foxtrotters, even the Rockies, might have a really big stride because people are mixing them up now, as we always mess things up. So when you're looking, it's not so much you got to look at the breed, look at the stride of the horse and how it's moving. If it's got a big, long-reaching gait, you don't want that for super steep hills. It'll be hard on the horse, and they won't do well. They'll get trippy and tired. You want something with a short stride, and if you have lots of rocks or things to go over, you want one that picks its knees up, because if it doesn't pick its knees up high enough, then again it might get trippy. And you want something calm but not lazy, because if it's lazy, they're going to drag their feet over the rocks. So as you're all looking at those pretty pictures of those horses and going, oh, I'm going to get that one, instead of looking at how pretty it is, you want to look how it moves and what your terrain is so you get the right one. Okay. So now we're going to go around this tree. So I'm going to bend him to the right rein, right leg. And I'm going to sit back, put my weight down at my feet and in my butt in half halts. Help him get down that little decline, because sometimes the grass is slippery. Now we're good. Now we're on the flat. Okay. Now he hasn't been on this part up here, so we'll see how he does. You know, it's always nerve-wracking for them if they don't know where they're going. So you'll hear he does hit the rocks once in a while, but he's not hitting them like the walking horse did. Not that Rockies can't trip. I know of Rockies that actually trip. Guess what? They're the lazier kind. They're lazy and bomb-proof, which is nice, but so if you got a short-sided one and it's tripping, you know, make sure its feet aren't sore. Urge it forward. Make it walk faster. Give it little jobs to do. Make sure it pays attention, and when it does trip, you know, stop back up. Stop back up. Do it 20 times. Now a squirrel jumped out, and you saw what he did. Right? There's a squirrel. There's always killer squirrels in here. It's okay, buddy. So I'm going to stay here. So he sees it as a squirrel. He's not really a spooky horse, but when things jump out, that's when he jumps. So he did just fine. He jumped, and the camera probably moved because I fell forward a little bit. And then he stopped. And I don't mind that at all, because he spooked in place, and that's the best we can hope for, is that, you know, hopefully the horse doesn't spook, but I don't mind if they spook a little bit, because if a tree falls, it does make a noise, just so you know. If a tree falls in the woods, it makes a big noise, and guess what? If you're under it and your horse doesn't spook, it's going to land on you. So I don't mind when a horse spooks, because if something like that happens, I want to go with them. And if they spook in place, that's just fine. Even if I move in the saddle, we're going over rocks. So I want you to see the difference. If you can, notice the difference. He has shoes on all the way around, so he went through them just fine. But if they spook and they spook in place, that's totally fine. They're horses. And I like them to be calm and bold and not spooky, but again, if there's something that we need to get around, I'd rather have a little bit in there so they get us out of trouble if we have a problem. If they're too lazy, then sometimes if you fall in a hole or something, they don't care, and they just stand there in the hole, or they fall down. But if you got one that can be a little spooky at times, well, they fall in a hole, they might jump up and get you out of there. All right, so we're gonna stand here for a minute. So I gave him a couple cookies. I'm making it like, why did we go all the way up to this scary road besides seeing the scary traffic and you scaring the crap out of me on this trail ride, lady? And I said, because I'm gonna give you cookies when we get there, so it's worth it. Because he doesn't get a lot of cookies. So he's like, oh, I just gotta walk a little and I get some cookies? Yeah. Okay, and then he gets to hear these weird noises and stuff. So now we're gonna turn. No, don't throw your head. Okay, so there's our turn in the forehand came in. Now we're gonna go back. So again, if you got a barn sour horse, sometimes they will speed up on their way back. You'll see he did not increase his speed. Now we're on the rocks. I'm gonna slow down a little bit. But this is so much better. When I rode him and he was barefoot, when we went over something like this, I felt horrible. I'd try to take him off in the bushes because I could just tell he was ouchy. It was like watching a person walk over gravel with their feet. He was like, ow, 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 ow. So now to see like he can walk over it just fine, it's very rewarding. It's worth the money of me paying for shoes for him to be comfortable. So I'm also not going to ride him on a loose rein. A lot of people will ride their Rockies like this. Couple reasons. I don't want him looking around, right? I want him paying attention. I don't want him to get heavy on his front end because again, he can pace a little bit, so I don't want him to get pacey. And he's a little looky when he's all by himself, and you know, group he's totally fine. But if he's by himself and I'm like this and a deer jumps out, you know what's going to happen? He's going to spin, and I'm not going to be able to stop him because my reins are too long. So it's best to have your reins shorter and just not be pulling at them and have your arms out in front of you. And then when you're somewhere open where you know nothing's going to jump out, sure, then ride him on the loose rein. But if you're riding your horse on a loose rein, he's always spinning. Some of it's because he can spin because you're not blocking him. So the more you learn to block and ride them, it's helpful. So, you know, we're going through the same path, and with the other horse I saw a deer on the right. So if that deer jumped out, the horse is not going to go towards the deer, which is to the right. He's going to go to the left. There, he just stumbled a little bit, so we're going to back him up because I haven't stopped him in a while anyhow. It's a good thing to do. So if he spooked, right, and spun, he's going to spin to the left. I know that because the scary object was on the right. So you want to block it by pulling on the right rein. So horse jumps to the left, you pull right. Horse jumps to the right, you pull left. Okay? Horse rears up, you lean forward and do not pull on their mouth because that's how people flip them over all the time. Horse bucks, you lean back as far as you can and get that horse's head up. That's the basic things to survive. If they spook in place, you just laugh. Okay? And I'll make more videos on behavior issues on the trail, like rearing and stuff. I just haven't lately, but I'm sure I'll get one that comes in that we'll work on. Okay, so again, as you're riding them too, you want the energy from the back end. You don't want a lot of weight on the front end. That's where all their weight normally is. They carry. So you're trying to teach them, hey, you got more power in the back end and you can carry me better if it's back a little bit. So if he leans on the bit, which he's leaning a little bit, I'm just sliding the bit. So I'm just making it uncomfortable for him to lean on it because I think he was ridden more with a looser rein. And so what did he do? He leaned on the bit because they get bored. Okay. So now we're going downhill. So he's a little heavy here. So he's pulling on the bit a little bit. I'm going to give one half halt. Now let's see what happens. Oh, another half halt because he got a little pacey. A little half halt because he felt like he was going to speed up through that gully. Now we're going to steer around the tree. So. Okay, so in the beginning when you don't know how to ride, sure, the horse hopefully will take care of you and you have an old slug. But once you get a horse, you know, that's not an old slug, or then you want to make sure that you help them, you ride them, and you're prepared. There's tons of people I hear, they're just falling off all the time, and I'm like, instead of buying new horses, you know what you might want to do? And they're like, what? It's like, you might want to take some lessons, because I don't think it's possible for you to get that many bad horses in a row, that you are falling off of all of them. I think it's probably more driver error. And they don't take any lessons, or at least not from me. Because they're probably pissed off I said that. But whatever, trying to save people, even if they get mad at me. I think, well, you should take a lesson from somebody. Hopefully they do. But again, if you keep falling off, you keep having issues. You have different horses, it's not the same horse doing this stuff. Take some lessons, learn how to do it correctly. Okay, so he's been going over rocks pretty good. Oh, you want to stop? I know what you want. Cookie time. No, I don't mind him stopping. Right? Because he's nervous, right? And what do nervous horses do? They don't stop. They don't stop and sit here looking around like, oh, what are we doing? But he actually thought, like, hey, I think I'd like another one of those treats, and I'll just stop here, because that's how I got a treat before. Good job. Yeah, you're so brave. Okay. So that was good. Okay, so let's go a little faster right here. So I'm going to pop his head up a little leg. I tapped him a little bit with my stick, because that wasn't very far to go, and I was trying to get him into his gait versus going into a foxtrot. I mean, he did it pretty good. Remember, uphill makes them trotty, so if they can trot and you don't set them up correctly, they might just go into a trot. And here, I didn't half halt at all. He did that all on his own, carrying himself down the trail. And these aren't steep, these are mild little things. But lots of horses will just not collect themselves and run down them. Oh, but he's going on his back end, which is great, because he did not know how to do that in the beginning either. Okay, let's go faster. So squeeze, a little cluck. I'm going to bring his head up, and I tap twice with my stick. Good. Now we're going to slow down, because we're going to go downhill again, and there's rocks, so we don't want him to trip. But that was good, and he was very willing to go out. And the nice thing about these following horses, see, he went forward, and then he calmed right back down. A lot of followers are like that, but a lot of the ones that are super brave, courageous horses that go down the trail super bold, you go fast with them, they don't slow down again. All right, now we got these rocks to go down. If they're looking, you can always loosen your rein so they can put their head down to look. And then once they see where they're going, like it's a step down or something, or they get down it, then I shorten the rein back up. I know I said, don't ride on a long rein, but things like that where they need to use their eyes to see it better, I do let them put their head down. So this little thing that goes down, we're not there yet. Okay, so here it is. So we go down and it's kind of rocky. If he wanted to put his head down and really look, I would let him. But I'm going to stop him slow, because he was going to go fast up that hill, right? Because somebody, I'm sure, let you do that somewhere in his riding. And we want him to stay slow so they don't get trippy or pacey. Okay. Now, any horse can trip, just like we trip. And you got to know that with riding horses. Some trip more than others, but they all can trip. Even the best of horses can trip and fall on their face one day. So the better your balance is and the more you help them, the safer you'll be. And if you go, well, my horse doesn't trip, you probably just cursed yourself, so watch out. Every person I have ever met has tripped. They don't always trip in front of me, but they have all tripped sooner or later. Over nothing, over sidewalks. It just happens. so we can't expect that. And they have 4 legs. We can't even control 2 legs. 2 legs and I trip. So they have 4 legs to control. I think that's much harder. So the fact they don't trip more often is beyond me. So I loosened the reins for a minute just to give him a break, and he decided, well, this is a good place to take a break again, Gaye. So this is great because he's gotten much more relaxed just being out here. I'll give you a half of one because I don't have so much left. Okay, so it's good to teach them to stand. Look, he's on a completely loose rein. He's not trying to run home or anything. He's looking around, but now he feels secure that I'm going to help him and he's okay. And again, it's scary in the woods because it's got all these turns, and so when the bike and deer, they just jump out. So see, now that I started back up again, and even though we're going slow, I have short rein, so I'm ready to ride it out, whatever happens if something comes flying at us. Here's another bit of advice. Sometimes you're going down the trail and the horse is fine, you have it on a loose rein or whatever, you have it on a looser rein and it's being calm and not doing anything. All of a sudden the horse picks its head up and it puts its ears up. When that happens, I immediately shorten up my reins because that means something's coming. Something's going to happen. It's either a deer, a person, a ghost, a bike. It's something, okay? But this is what I see when it happens. People are on a loose rein like this and the horse puts their head up and they just put their hand down like this. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like, get ready. And they're like, ready for what? I'm like, are you serious? The horse just said something's coming. They're like, oh, he's fine. He never spooks. They never spook until the day they spook. So why risk falling off? Why not just shorten your reins for a minute and stop being lazy and actually ride? But again, I don't know why. People don't want to. So if your horse picks its head up, its ears go forward, or it even just jumps a little bit, or you're like, that's weird, he's acting a little weird. Shorten your reins up, sit back, and keep your hands wide, and just be ready. And then when the horse goes back to being calm, then you can loosen back up. But you get one chance usually to shorten your reins, and if you don't do it at the right time, you won't be ready for it. And the next thing you will be ready for is a hospital. So try to shorten your reins anytime the horse gives you a warning that something might happen. And if it's a horse that spooks all the time, well, then I would never be on a loose rein. Just ride with contact, and if you want to, your arm's hurt or something and you want to take a break, then you just stop, or you could stop and get off and take a break. But you don't want to be up there and not prepared. This guy's doing great. It just, I don't know, for some reason I thought of that at the moment. Figured I better say it. But he's doing awesome all by himself.